non-alcoholic.
Cheers.
Thank you for that, everyone. Normally I'm active. I was very happy being the center of attention. Right now I want to melt into the floor. But I didn't think a year ago I'd be sitting here. I came in and not only did I thought I could drink and I didn't need the program, I thought that I could stop and I didn't need the program. I just didn't want to stop. And I'm grateful that my parents sent me out of society and put me in a place that taught me that I need to, work a program. Because my life was completely out of like my own control. It was completely unmanageable, and I couldn't see it. I was in a lot of denial. I was very much filled with self-will and dishonesty and manipulation and selfishness, and I couldn't see any of it. So I am grateful to be sitting here right now today, because thank goodness there were some powerful people in my life that my higher power put there to show me that I need to be here. But my life was I thought pretty normal, but it was, I was born into a beautiful family. I've got 2 loving parents who are still together today, and a beautiful little sister who's 2 years younger than me. And my life was filled with everything and anything I ever wanted. I didn't have much trauma or tragedy. When I was 2 years old, I was kidnapped. I was gone for 4 hours. They took me out of the car. They pulled my mom. They wanted the car, not me. But I don't remember much of it. I don't remember anything. I was very young. But what I did get from that is my first proper resentment, and that was to my mom. I blamed her for it. I said that I couldn't trust people because of it. And I held that against her all the way through until I went into treatment. Because to me, that was the reason I was like that, how I was with everyone in my life. And from there, I was a daddy's girl, because my dad was my biggest enabler, and I knew that. And I manipulated and played him to get anything and everything. And that's how my life went. I went to school, and at the age of 6, and all I realized is I just wanted people to like me. I wanted everyone, not just like one group. I didn't want to be friends with just like one group of people. I wanted to be friends with everyone. And that's where I learned to start chameleoning myself into other people. I'd be one person with this group and one person with that group. I'd be one person with the teachers and another person with the students. Because I just wanted to be anything to fit in. And then my dishonesties, and I would lie about, my parents are going through a tough time to make people feel bad for me. Meanwhile, my family was fine. But I couldn't be myself. I didn't think I was worth anything. There was nothing authentic about who I was or what I was doing. And I learned from a young age that no one would like me for me. That's how I believed. And I lived most of my life like that. I lived all the way through school. I did well in school. I was a good student. I'd never studied, but I always passed. I was a sportswoman. I played a lot of water polo, hockey, swimming. I did well in that, and that was my identity. I was always popular, but I was friends with everyone, as I said. So I made sure that all the groups knew who I was, but didn't really know who I was. I had secrets, like there was no tomorrow. And when I left high school was when I really struggled, because I all of a sudden didn't know who I was going to fit in with. I didn't have that base. I had to all of a sudden reinvent more lies and reinvent more to try and fit in. My drinking already, by the time I had my first drink, I don't really remember my first drink, but I remember at 13 was the first time I got blackout drunk. I went out on a night out, and I got photocopied my mom's ID, thinking I could change the numbers, photocopied it again, and I got bounced from the nightclub at 13. I'm glad I did, but I ended up in a car drinking with other people, waiting for someone to come and fetch us to take us home, and I don't remember a thing from there. I remember waking up at a boy's house and everyone was playing games at the table, and I was like, and I had another drink, and then I was out cold again, and I woke up at home. And that was the story of my life. I couldn't drink without getting blackout drunk from that age. My parents from a young age would say, you can't drink, you shouldn't drink. And I couldn't see it. I thought I was having fun. I thought everyone would be like that. I thought I was normal, and that's how I grew up. I don't remember feeling different. I don't remember. I thought everyone felt the way I did, and I fought to be normal. I tried everything, and I didn't realize that me fighting to be normal made me abnormal, made me, different from everyone else. And so going into uni, I felt really lost. I felt scared. I'd chosen to go into chefing because I thought, okay, that'll be an easy route. Meanwhile, it was the hardest thing I think I ever did. I remember phoning my parents every night saying I hated it and, like trying to manipulate them into trying to do something different. And my mom was like, we've paid a fortune. Like, you need to stay and carry on. And I'm grateful for that because I went into a career in hospitality and I love what I do. I love people. I love, even though I'm scared of people and I've figured it, I do love people. I love being involved. I love being a part of, especially now when I'm in recovery. But, I went to uni in Cape Town and it was from the get-go a mess. 4 months in, I managed to get blackout drunk as I did, and I crashed my car. But I didn't only crash my car, I crashed it into Central Police Station in Cape Town. And that was great because I don't remember a thing, but manipulative me, I managed to open the passenger side door and convinced the cops that I was in the passenger and the driver ran off, and they gave me a lift home for free and they towed my car. They did though call my parents, and I obviously now had to answer for all of this. But like behind the scenes of all of that, like my grandparents were in Cape Town to come and visit me, and this was the night before my grand's birthday. And that was the phone call she got woken up to, is that I'd been in a car accident. And I didn't know. I answered the call. They phoned me that morning, woke me up, and I was like, I'm coming downstairs now, I'm coming. And she was like, well, don't you remember what happened last night? You don't have a car. And that wasn't enough consequences for me to realize that I had a problem, because I still went on for another 11 years of drinking. But, my time in Cape Town was more of that. More of leaving my car in CBD and never knowing where it was, and my dad had to eventually put a tracker on my car so I could find it the next day. Not because he was worried he was trying to find the car. That's what my head told me. But he was worried. He was concerned about where I was and what I was doing. But I was so oblivious to the people in my life and what I was putting them through. My sister moved to come and be with me in Cape Town, and the first couple of months went well. I showed her around. I felt like a big sister. And I think that was the last time I was a big sister, was when I was 21. Because from there it was a downhill spiral. She would come home and I'd be pissed and I'd be trying to fight with her or steal stuff from her or anything like that. There was no relationship. But I would manipulate her into thinking my parents were the bad guys and don't tell them anything and hide this for me, And she did. Because she loved me and she thought she was helping, and she thought that if she gets in trouble, it gets worse because we fight. And my poor sister just held on to all of these secrets for me all my life. And I just used and abused her is what I did, because I was nasty about her. I was nasty to my parents. I would say that to her, but I would tell her, my parents stuff about her and put her down. And, I never thought about her. I always thought about me and making myself look better in my parents' eyes. Because she was one of my big resentments again, because she couldn't do anything wrong. I always used to say to her, I was on, careful, your halo's crooked, because she was not one of us, so to me, she wasn't messing up the way I was, and I was like, oh, come on, don't you want? I tried to make her drink. I would try to lead her down that path to try and make myself feel okay, but she just didn't want to, and I could never understand it, but again, I did I wanted so badly again to be normal. So that for me, I just brushed that aside. I put it under a carpet of stuff that I didn't want to look at, because I am normal, is what I kept telling myself. After my chefing courses, I worked in beautiful kitchens and all of that, but my laziness started to show. I worked in #1 restaurants in the country and I was really fortunate for where I worked, but I never took anything seriously. I messed around. I would come in hungover all the time. I would lie. I would smoke in the toilets, silly, child stuff. I never grew up. I kept it all going until I came into treatment. And eventually, places would sit me down and be like, we don't know what to do with you. And that's from a young age. I was 20, 21, and they were like, we don't know what to do. So eventually I did what I did best and I ran away. And I went and started a degree in communications, and my parents yet again forking out more money. And I just messed around. I went and got a job and started working. And I'll never forget my first job. I got hired and I was drunk. Hired. So I didn't know I had gotten a job. The manager phoned me and said, well, we've got this position, you've got this position, are you coming to work tomorrow? And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I am. And not even 3 months later, I was fired because I was drunk. Like, the irony of all of that, my first job, and I couldn't see it. And from there, it was just the same thing. You know, I would have some jobs that turned into a drug for me. They turned into that, like, my obsession. And I did well, and I would thrive. If there was learning opportunities and things for growth, I would fix off of work. And I stopped going to uni. I stopped pitching up for lessons and lectures. I started just kind of really lying to my parents about that, because then I would start failing and not letting them know. And then somehow convincing them I needed this money for the car so I could pay for that, so I could redo that subject. And, you know, it was all just this web of lies that I couldn't keep up with. And in my last year, they found out about I failed one of my courses, and I remember this disappointment email. That's what my parents were good at. It wasn't like a phone call. My family didn't do talks with each other about hard things. There was always a letter or a disappointment email. And my gosh, do I have a drawer full of them or an inbox full of them, because it was constant. And I remember that, sitting there and thinking, like, things need to change. Like, I need to do better. You know, I can't just do this. But that thought very quickly left me, because I continued. And I finished uni, scraping by. I got my degree, but I've done nothing with it. It was a degree I didn't want to do. It kept me as a student for longer. It was something that selfishly I just needed, and I wanted to use to be young and fun for life. And I came home because my parents wouldn't pay for an honors course, which I was very disappointed about. And I remember sulking with them for ages. And my mom said, well, what are you going to do now? We're not paying for you to do anything here. Like, what are you going to do? And this is now back in Zimbabwe, where things are quite tough. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know. I thought I could stay here. I thought I could, maybe come work for you. And my mom was like, not a chance. She was like, we don't want you here. So she yet again paid for me to get a British visa and put me on a plane. A week later, once they got her approved, I had no job, no place to live. It was finally time to adult, and put me on a plane to London. And I remember being so terrified, because I didn't have any friends in London. I didn't have a place to live. Everyone had organized this stuff for me all my life, and now all of a sudden I had to do something. I had to take some responsibility. My parents weren't just over the border in Zimbabwe to fly over and come and help me if I needed something. I'm now in a European country where police are really strict. You can't just bribe them with a beer, and I've grown up with. And I arrived there and I isolated. It was my first instinct. I would phone my parents and say, I'm job hunting. But a friend of mine organized for me to stay in his mom's friend's house. So this lady became like a friend. I loved her because she would enable me. She would baby me. She'd be like, it's okay, you don't need to pay rent this month, it's all right. And I loved that. I fixed off of that stuff. I always wanted someone to look after me. I was entitled to everyone's time and everyone's money, and I took no responsibility. And I thrived in that. So for 3 months, I sat on my bum and had meals cooked for me. I didn't get a job, and I didn't drink, funny enough, because I didn't have money to go out and do this. My parents were very strict on that. But eventually it got time that Ali, the lady I was living with, kind of had enough. And she was like, you need to go and get a job. So her daughter, I couldn't do that on my own either, because her daughter took me to go to places to look for a job. And I found one in a very well-known restaurant, and I was chefing again. And this took a month of chefing, and the chef said to me, Jess, you're great at chefing, you do well, but you chat far too much. He said to me, you are brilliant, but you don't belong in a kitchen. You belong front of house, working in restaurants, talking with people. And I was like, okay. So I quit that job thinking no one likes me, as I always did, because any form of criticism or anything like that, my head goes to, I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. And so I left. I had another month of doing nothing, but I found a waitressing job quite quickly in a really great company that they were small, independent neighborhood bars, and I loved that they had a passion and they taught us well, and there were things. And so yet again, work became a fix. And I loved it, and I thrived, and I worked hard. And in 2 months, I became a manager. And from there, I became an assistant general manager in 6 months. And this company started making me train people and teach people things and and I loved it. I remember thinking, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, and I'm going to own my own restaurant, and I'm going to make people passionate about food. And I remember making sure that every guest that walked through our door was having a great time. I didn't want to do anything wrong in this place, because this is amazing, and I didn't want anything to change. And eventually I got written up in an article in London, and it was the 30 people under 30 to watch in hospitality, and I lost the plot. There was pressure now all of a sudden. There was people watching me. I felt like I could get away with stuff before, little mistakes, but now I had this goal, my perfectionism started to show, and I had standards that I couldn't reach, and I'm not good enough, and I'm just not going to perform. And that was where I just started drinking at work. And it was because everyone's partying, I'll just sneaky shot here and there, won't do anyone any harm. But I don't drink to just have a few drinks. I drink to black out. I drink to absolute oblivion, and I fight with people in the end. I started fighting with staff and getting aggressive and controlling, and my work ethic went as well, because then I just wanted to party. And a job that I loved so much, I lost because of that. I had to resign before I remember drinking a Bloody Mary on the roof terrace and thinking I was part of the party, but forgetting about the cameras, and I knew that the boss had seen it, but I resigned. I ran away before they could fire me. And this is all stuff that fueled my denial and everything, is because I never lost a job in London, but I ran away from all the jobs before anyone could fire me. And so I moved on very quickly. I found another job this time, but at this job I had now found a beautiful little white powder that I thought was my new solution to things, because now the blackouts didn't come. And that was the problem with those blackouts. So now life was okay. I was productive. I could work, and I could do 5 days straight, and I was going in it, and don't worry about the paranoid and having to look at a till with one eye open, and that kind of stuff wasn't a problem. But what was a problem for me was all of a sudden I had no money. I couldn't afford things. So I started to steal. I started to take money, not just from the company, but I stole from my staff. I took the service charge off of bills, and I thought I was so clever, and I probably was, because no one ever caught me. But and I would steal from staff, and I would take their tips, essentially. And I had to fire people during that time for doing exactly what I did. And I was, at this point, my conscience had gone. I didn't have anything. It was all about me, and if I was okay, and what I looked like, and I was still presenting quite well, and no one could, to me, no one could see anything going on. So I would fire those people without a second thought for things that I was doing myself. I was taking bottles home. I was, this company had so much extra stock. I would throw lock-in parties at the restaurant for all the staff in the neighborhood of other places. And it was mad what I was doing. And I knew how to disable the camera system, so that I all these things I'd learned. And I was sneaky. Meanwhile, when the bosses were around, I was on point. I was doing this right, until I wasn't. Until I needed more, my solution wasn't working, and I just started missing work. I would start coming in late. I I would get paranoid. Like my fear of people was huge. I couldn't enjoy work anymore. And I eventually, within the company, did geographicals, because this place had 25 different sites all around London. So I moved from one to the other to the other. I was there for each month, because I would start almost getting caught or start not mixing with people, because everyone else was the problem. Everyone else, this guy was too loud and he was Italian, and there were all these reasons. But but it wasn't me. I was lovely. That's what I always used to say. I'm lovely. What do you mean no one likes me? Because by this point, I had the delusion that I was like an arrogance and a grandeur. Like I knew what I was doing. I'd done this for so long. And I eventually had to leave the company because I'd almost been caught. I couldn't do it, and I ran away. And my excuse was that I had a busy Christmas, December, and I needed to take a month off before I went back to work. What happened was, though, is that I took that month off in February 2020. And when I got a new job, I worked for 3 days, and COVID hit and lockdown happened. And so now I had no job. So in London, they put people on furlough, so they paid them out a certain percentage. I didn't have that. So yet again, I was 27, 28, and living off of mum and dad. They were paying my rent. They were paying my food bills, and money was tight. And throughout my whole life, I'd already had a bad relationship with food. I had always been an overeater, an emotional eater, and I kind of comforted myself with food. Going into chefing, I think it was a way of learning more about food and being around it, and kind of, there was subconsciously something there, but I never thought I had an eating disorder. I didn't realize that. I think I was probably like a compulsive eater during my whole life. I was chubby, and I was image conscious of that, because of course I cared what people thought of me, and that had a lot to do with what I looked like. And but when COVID hit, it was hard, because I put on a lot of weight. I didn't drink or to use my other drug of choice, but what I did was I ate, and I comfort ate, and I was locked in a house for 4 months. I didn't go out and see people. I thought I took COVID regulations very seriously. Meanwhile, what I did was I just sat in my own filth practically, and listened to my head, and was like, you can't go out there. And I put on so much weight that when COVID the lockdown ended, I went to go and put on clothes, because I'd finally found a new job, and then nothing fit me. Absolutely nothing. And my ego and everything just shattered. And that was where my eating disorder really kicked off. I started throwing up. I started every meal, I would stick my fingers down my throat. I couldn't keep anything down. I started exercising like there was no tomorrow, like a crazy person. I'd have settings on my watch, and I'd be like, right, I have to burn these calories. So I would walk back and forth in my flat to burn the calories, or I would be on the floor doing push-ups, and this madness of I have to get down to a certain place and a certain figure. And I didn't go to that first day of that job because of what I felt and what I looked like. The fear of oh my gosh, I had no money, I had nothing. There was such a responsibility in that, because I let my feelings dictate everything around that situation. And anyway, so my eating disorder just kicked off. I went, but then from there, I think that's truly where my madness was there, because from there I never had a stable job, all the way through, and through 2022 and 2020, the beginning of 2022. I would start a job, I'd be good for a couple of weeks, I wouldn't drink or anything, and then I'd start drinking at work once I got comfortable. And I would leave job after job. Again, not getting fired, I would run away. And I'd have periods where I was back on mum and dad's bank, and they would look after me, and then I would get another job and run. But I wouldn't lie to my family. They knew nothing about that. They thought I was at one stable job, because I had told him I'd lost a couple, and my mum started questioning and saying, maybe there's not something wrong with the jobs, maybe there's something wrong with you. And I was like, that's not the case at all. So I started lying and just saying I was at one job because that was easier for me. And it was always about what was easier for me in that situation. And anyway, eventually it got to the point where London was the problem now, and I needed another geographical. And my passport was coming through from the UK, and I was thinking, well, maybe it's time. I'm going to go and get on the yachts. That's what I'm going to do, because money is easy to make on the yachts. So I gave up my flat. I moved in with my sister for a bit, and yet again, I caused chaos for her. I would steal her and her boyfriend's booze and fill it up with water and all those silly classic things that an alcoholic does. But all the time thinking everything's okay and she doesn't know. And I would go out and party on my own in this small town. And I started to get known as that girl that, be careful of her. Because she likes to fight, And who does that? So I would go and sit by myself, and I would chat with all the bartenders were my mates, because I knew no one there. I'd scared everyone off in my life. All my friends had started to be those people that I would use and abuse. I haven't spoken much about friends in my life. I've had one proper friend, Denise, that I've known for years, but she's put up with enough stuff that eventually she cut me out. Last year she said enough is enough, and I haven't really spoken to her since. I've had one message on her birthday, and but she doesn't reply. And that's years and years of abuse. She put up with years and years, and eventually she did. She just stopped. But other friends, they were people from work, and a group there and a group here, and I just used and abused. I would lie, and no one really knew me, and that's it was bad. And so when I was in Dorking, it finally was at the point I had absolutely no one. The bartenders were my friends. And I got my passport, my British passport, and my parents were like, okay, well, come home now then. And that was where everything fell apart for me. That was where it wasn't my rock bottom, it was my parents' rock bottom. I say that because my rock bottom was in treatment. But I came home, and my parents took one look at me, and I was practically skin and bones by that point. My eating disorder and the use of drugs and alcohol had weathered my body down to absolutely nothing. I looked absolutely gaunt, tired. I could barely string sentences together in front of people because I was paranoid, and I believed everything in my own head. I was fearful and scared. But I couldn't see this. I thought I was okay. I thought I was absolutely fine. I thought everything was going to be great. I'm going to go to Cape Town. I went and got my yachting papers, and I came home, and I was like, I'm going to go to the Caribbean and get on the yacht. I had a job lined up and everything. And anyway, my parents then brought up treatment. And they said, you are not okay. And spoiled brat Jessica looked at them and I threw a fit. I threw my toys out the cot. I was like, I don't need it. This is not right. You guys are just trying to punish me for something. I couldn't see what I was doing to them. They were terrified of what was happening. And I had been drinking at home when they were at work, and then tried to act fine when they came home. But by that time, I was blackout drunk and lying on the floor in my room, and it was scary for them to see what was going on. And we had one last big fight, and I took half their alcohol and went and locked myself, and they've got a cottage at the house. And I proceeded for 2 weeks to just kind of not talk to them. I would take myself away from them and just drink. And I thought that was the answer. And while I was doing this, I was contacting a travel agent and trying to book a flight to go and get on the boat, because now I had everything. I had my passport, I had all of this, and a visa came through. And the travel agent called my mom because she was like, she's not okay on the phone. And my mom broke into the cottage and snuck in and stole my credit card. And my mum, I found out, and I proceeded to go through to the house. And my dad was home, my mum wasn't, and I started screaming at him. I was like, where is it? And I picked up anything I could that wasn't nailed down, and I broke every window in their house. I smashed every single window, and I couldn't see it at all what was happening. I felt so like out of control of my life. I didn't know what I was going to do. And anyway, my dad followed me out the house. I was walking back into the cottage, and he was like just begging me, like, calm down, talk to me. And I turned around and I said to him, like, do you want me to freaking kill myself? Like, that's the words I used. And now that holds such significance because my dad's dad was an alcoholic and shot himself when my dad was 8. I knew exactly what I was saying to him in that moment. I knew where those words would go. And my dad just looked like he aged 10 years and 5 seconds. But he gave up. He didn't say anything. He just walked away, and that was it. I didn't talk to my dad again until 2 months into treatment because I was angry with him. I was angry with him. Anyway, I walked into that cottage and I was like, right, how am I going to get myself out of this one? That was my reaction. It's like, every time I got into trouble, how am I going to get myself out of this one? So I agreed to go to treatment for 4 weeks. 28 days was my agreement. My parents suggested 6. I said 28 days, and we were off. They didn't waste any time because they didn't want me to change my mind. And I remember pitching up in the Midlands, and I was terrified. I was so scared, but I didn't want to let anyone in on it. So I arrived, and I didn't even think of my mom. I was like, okay, she can go now. Bye, and I kind of gave her a kiss, and I've got tears in the back of my eyes, but I'm trying not to, and it was nothing. I showed no emotion for her or anything like that. And I remember one of the counselors bringing that up in one of the concern groups was because she was like, I just did not think of her. It was all about me. And I was not in the boat at all. I complied, I lied, I broke into the kitchen in the middle of the night because now my eating disorder was not honest. I saw James's head go there. I lied and complied, and my eating disorder was through the roof. And I did the steps, and I tried to look like I was in the boat, and I had buddies that were would give me a lot of growth, but I wasn't there for it. And I really tried to work a Jess program, I really did, and I thought I was acing it, but every concern group came, and every time the counselors are like, you are complying. And I was like, I'm not, but meanwhile, I was. And I made my way all the way through the 12 steps, but in that time I'd been caught out with my eating disorder, and my counsellor had now made the suggestion to go to Cape Town to go and work with a counsellor there. And by this time, I wanted everyone, I was complying. I was like, yes to anything. Everyone called it willingness. There was no willingness. I just wanted to kind of agree. And so I sat in my leaving group, and my peers said the most beautiful things about me. Beautiful. They called me loud, which I am, but other than that, it was kind words. And I got to my counselor, and she said lovely stuff. But watch, the one line she said that sticks with me is, you turned into a woman I respect. And that was my rock bottom in treatment, because I hadn't changed. I was still the same Jess that wanted everything and was running on self-will, was dishonest, was manipulative, was trying to live different lives and trying to make everyone like her, because then I wouldn't get concerned, but also because I just was so scared. I hadn't surrendered. I hadn't found anything. I could tell you that big book for the back of my hand. I could, because that was part of who I was. I could, manipulate people with words from the program, but I didn't live the program. And I felt lonely. I felt apart from. I felt like I couldn't do this. I just couldn't keep up anymore. And I left that treatment center ready to stop fighting, ready to work a program and get honest and do things the way that everyone had told me to and everyone had shown me to, but I just didn't want to. And it was beautiful, because my rock bottom was clean and sober. My behavior took me there. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm an alcoholic, and I don't need alcohol to show me that. I just need my behavior without a program. And that was my turning point. I went to Cape Town and I sat down with my counselor, and I remember still there was a lot of closed-mindedness and a lot of push and pull, and it took a long time, and the people in Cape Town were a problem now, and I just needed to go home for a bit just and have a break, because by this point I'd been in treatment 5 months. And but I love that she pushed me. She didn't give in to any of my rubbish. She saw straight through everything. And I thought I had arrived. I remember thinking when I came there, I was like, Shane, these people haven't done their 12 steps. And, here I come. I'll come and save you all. Don't you worry. I'll teach you the big book. And my word was I knocked down for that. But it was so beautiful. I found myself there. I started to learn to be authentic, to not people please and do what others tell me, and start actually just having a voice and being like, no, I don't like that, let's do this instead. And I still struggle with that today, but I learn now. I've got reference points. My step 5 and 4 and 5 was really hard, because I kind of processed stuff in my first one, but this one, it was the core of who I was. It was that stuff that I'd held on with my mom and my sister and my dad, and I resented the hell out of them. And I started to really see how selfish I'd been, and how oblivious and just so completely lost to the fact that there were people in my life that loved me, and I hadn't loved them back, and I hadn't given them any time or love. Sorry, I'm going on a bit. But, I went through that process, and it took another 5 months, 10 months in treatment, because I was that bad that I needed to be taken out of society for 10 months. But I remember the suggestion of the halfway house came, and I loved it, because in my mind, I was like, yes, it's going to be a group of people living by the beach. And I remember also my entitlement and all of that was halfway house. Isn't that where prisoners go? So I was like, let's just call it a sober digs and it'll be fun. And, But eventually I wanted a foundation. I wanted to go out, and I wanted to be with people that wanted what I've now learned to want, because I had to learn to want it. It didn't just come easily for me. This year has been hard. It's been a lot of fighting with myself and losing that battle a lot of the time, but learning that I didn't need to battle anymore, and I just needed to surrender. And coming to the halfway house was scary, a new fellowship, new people, and my normal reaction to life is to throw my hands up and be like, I'm gonna be that person that you want, and let's lose all authenticity, and let's just people please, and that's my old behavior. And I needed to learn not to do that this time around. I needed to learn to walk through the fears and know that my higher power's got my back. And if people don't like me, that's okay, because that's something I struggle with. And it's been beautiful. The fellowship here has been something I'm so grateful for every day, because I've learned so much more about myself here. I've learned a lot more about recovery, because being out of treatment, I feel like I was institutionalized, and I loved it. And everyone talks about not liking rules. I love those rules. I love being told when to eat, and and all of that was beautiful. Coming out here, I was lost. All of a sudden, I get to decide what to eat, and it was scary, but it was. I've been very fortunate. I've been blessed that I got 2 jobs really quickly, back to back. One didn't work out, but I got another one very quickly, and I enjoy work. I get to be of service within the fellowship. I do a lot of service, and I love being of service. It takes me out of myself. I enjoy being with other fellows, trying to share a message that, even if you don't want it, this program works eventually if you try and work it, because that's my experience. My experience is, if you give it a try, and just be open-minded, eventually open-minded, it works. And I can sit here today and be grateful that I've got so many wonderful, loving people in my life that have pushed me into that right direction, because I could not do it on my own. I didn't want it, but I do want it now, and I want it for as long as I can have it. And that's really beautiful. My relationship with my family has been absolutely beautiful. I can say beautiful a lot, but it is. sorry, I've run on. But my mom comes next week. My parents have been really supportive all the way through treatment. They've not been that family that kind of wanted to give up on me or anything. They've supported me. My mom comes next week, and I get to make amends in person. I get to spend time with her, and it's not about me, and it's about doing things she loves, and just being present, because I was never present. And I'm grateful to be here, sitting in this chair, because a year ago I know I didn't want it, but I do now. So thanks for letting me share, everyone.